Are you a good seller or a bad seller? Well, I'm going to tell you exactly how eBay evaluates that on the other side. So without any further ado, let's go. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is John with Flippin' Ain't Easy, and I'm making this video because I thought it was really important to stress the need that all sellers out there really need to focus on their account health. I mean, we talk about sourcing as being the #1 way to win at this game, but all that aside, I mean, even if you source well and you have an account that's just shot because it's full of defects and problems, at least from what eBay sees, well, you're going to have a hard time selling that stuff and making the kind of money you should be making because you may not have good account health. So in this video, I want to talk to you about the importance of account health and what eBay looks for to determine how you are matching up to your peers. So that's the first thing. You are compared to your peers. Okay, so there's no actual line that you have to cross to be deemed as a bad seller. It's really based on your sales volume, the category that you sell in or the categories you sell in, and how you match up against similar sellers that sell in similar volumes as you do. And there's anywhere from the casual seller on up to the multi-million-dollar seller and many, many points in between. So eBay kind of matches you up to what they deem as your peers. Now, you're evaluated on the 20th of every month. Every seller is, okay? And now some sellers are evaluated for only 3 months, 90 days, the last 3 months, or you are evaluated for the last 12 months. And what determines that is the number of transactions that your account has within that last 90-day period, that 3-month window. So if you've had more than 400, that's 400 transactions on eBay with that one store, you might have multiple stores, but each store is evaluated separately. More than 400 transactions, you are evaluated every 3 months. So it's a rolling 3-month window, but it's every month you're evaluated, but you're evaluated looking back only 3 months. Now, if you've had less than 400 transactions over the last 3 months, then eBay is going to look at that as not a large enough sample size, and they're going to evaluate you based on the last 12 months of data, okay? And so that's kind of how it's determined. So the more sales that you can actually get in place to exceed that 400 every 3 months, I think that's an average of 133 sales in a month. So you need to do better than that. Otherwise, eBay is going back a full year. Now, why is that a problem? In my eyes, that's a problem because you may have had some hiccups, 10 months ago that is still being counted against you. Whereas if you had a high enough volume of sales, then they're only looking back 3. And that bad run you had back in April is no longer being looked at. So I think it's always important, especially those who take this seriously or maybe consider themselves full-time sellers, to get your sales up. And I know in a bad economy with bad sales, that's hard to do, but that's something we should all strive for so that we can maintain that 3-month look-back window and not have that 12-month counted against us. So let's talk a moment about the different things that eBay looks at to determine your seller level within the evaluation period that you're assigned. Now, these are things you want to avoid doing because, see, your account health is, to me, the most important thing, and I think one of the most overlooked reasons why people don't get the sales that they think they should be getting. So by addressing these things, improving in these areas, you're going to improve your chances of getting a better boost in best match search. This is a very, very critical component of your success on eBay. Now, the first thing I'm going to talk to you about is cases closed without seller resolution. And that could be something as simple as a return request that you allow to lapse. Yeah, the buyer gets to keep the item and the refund because you failed to act by the date. Let's talk about when the buyer returns your item. You receive the return and you allow that to lapse and you think no big deal because I got my item back, the buyers got their money back. And that's not the case, because if you allow eBay to handle that refund for you, that's a case closed without seller resolution. And also you can be dealing with other things that require your attention, like an item not received case, and you don't respond within a timely manner. And guess what? eBay has to step in and they have to handle it on your behalf because their concern is for the customer's experience. And if you're waiting too long to act upon what eBay expects you to act upon, they're going to hit you with a defect. And I don't blame them for this, guys. Defects are not good for your account, but as sellers, we need to be on top of our accounts. So something like this, you know, it's bad. If you are evaluated and you have at least 2 within your evaluation period, that's deemed as very high. Or if you have 0.3% of all your transactions, then they take that number instead, okay? And it's, again, compared to your peers. So if you're dealing with a lot of other people that have high rates, then maybe it's not going to hurt you in that particular evaluation period, because all of these things we're talking about is you being evaluated against what eBay deems to be your peers. And we talked about that at the beginning of the video. The next thing that eBay looks for that you need to avoid is a high transaction defect rate. Now, one example of that is if you cancel a sale due to being out of stock or if the item is broken. There's an option when you cancel a transaction. And if you select out of stock, guess what? That is a transaction defect rate. Guess what else is a transaction defect rate? One of the things we just talked about with your cases closed without seller resolution. Any of those examples I told you about, that is also a transaction defect rate. Yes, eBay is double dipping, penalizing you in both evaluation metrics because they feel that it is that important to your success and a buyer's overall satisfaction on the platform that they emphasize that cases closed without seller resolution get treated as a double whammy against the seller. Now, when it comes to transaction defect rates, you're allowed only 2% of your transactions within your evaluation period to have those defects. And now, eBay does have a little caveat. You have to have at least 4 unique buyers with 4 unique transactions within that evaluation period. The next one is your late shipment rate. You want to avoid being very high with your shipments. And a late shipment is considered to be 2 things. Both of these things must be true for eBay to consider this as a late shipment. You ship an item after your handling time. So if you have same day and you decide to ship tomorrow, well, that's a late shipment requirement number 1. And if the item arrives to the buyer after the window of dates, the dates that eBay has estimated for it to arrive in the listing, if it arrives beyond that, guess what? You've met both requirements for a late shipment. You can ship it out the day after you're supposed to, and the item will arrive within that window the buyer was promised. eBay is not going to count it against you. So both of those things have to apply. Now, if you're deemed within your evaluation period to be very high with your late shipment rates, it doesn't hurt your seller level like the other ones do, but it will prevent you from being top rated plus. So if you have top rated plus, you value being top rated plus, then you need to make sure you're not very high with your shipment rates. So the next one is a very high item not received rate, where you get a lot of claims from buyers that have not received their item in a timely manner. And it doesn't even matter if you've done everything you're supposed to do, like ship it out within your window or your handling time. That buyer, if they don't receive it by a certain amount of time, and there's no guidebook for a buyer to follow, they could actually open an item not received case the same day you ship it. And it's counted as one case opened against you. And again, you're compared to your peers. And if you're deemed very high, then eBay is going to start adding more time, your delivery time, to your listings. Now, that might seem like a good thing, but in actuality, if your buyer is looking to buy something and they show that it's going to take an extra 3 to 4 days to get it as compared to someone else selling it, they're probably not going to buy from you. And what eBay will also do is they'll put a hold on your funds until you've actually shipped it and received an acceptance scan. And eBay will prevent you from using the refund tool, which is something that I cherish to have because it is part of your seller protection. You can use your 50% refund if you have that tool, but without it, you have no protection at all. You're forced to give a full refund. The last thing is very high item not as described rates. Now, some people will call that INADs, some people will call that SNADs, significantly not as described, but these are all tied into your returns. And this is the only type of return that eBay really cares about. Now, buyers will send back stuff due to remorse, like doesn't fit or changed mind. Those returns don't count against you. It's when there's a problem with the item. And if a buyer opens an item not as described, or if they open a return as damaged, something like that, something that is the seller's fault. Now, it may not even be true, but if the buyer selects that reason, eBay is going to side with the buyer, and that transaction, that return, becomes the seller's fault. Now, it happens. Again, you're being compared to your peers, so eBay is going to look at it whether it's very high or not. Now, another thing that eBay looks at is it's by category as well. So someone that sells within a niche that has a lot of returns is going to probably get hit harder than someone like me who has a lot of returns and over 20 to 30 different categories, because eBay will not count a very high INAD, item not as described, ratio against you if you have less than 10 unique buyers, 10 unique transactions. So it can't be the same buyer buying from you. And so one benefit for selling everything, I guess, is having that spread out, all those different returns spread out. Now, if you're deemed as being very high as compared to your peers, then eBay will not allow you to use the refund tool. At the beginning of the next month, they will start charging you an additional 5% fees, final value fees, for that particular category. Not necessarily your entire store. If you're an everything seller, it's just the affected category where you're deemed to be very high in INAD. And these are things that I think overall, we're talking these 5 different things that I talked about. These are things that we can all work on doing better, and it contributes to a better buying experience. So thankfully, eBay did not implement the changes that they implemented on the international sellers who sell on ebay.com, but it does highlight the importance of some of these categories. And I think a lot of people may have just thought that item not received was one that isn't counted against sellers, and it is. It's one of these 5 things that eBay evaluates you on every 20th of the month. And I gotta tell you guys, there's nothing in writing, but I'm willing to bet with 100% certainty, utilizing all my experience, not only as a seller, but as a person who has been involved with other selling accounts and watching performance when things happen, that these things here that I just talked about do affect your account health, in some way or another where it affects your visibility in a best match search. I'm convinced of that. And I know that there's nothing technically in writing, because you start to infringe upon the proprietary information that goes into the algorithm. So eBay is never going to tell us that or confirm what I just said. But from my experience, I'm 100% certain of that. And I'll even go as far as saying when you get a negative and or a neutral, that's looked at as well in your overall account health score. And eBay will assign you, behind the scenes, your account a score. So if you are selling an item and your competitor is selling the same item for the same price, you have everything the same in the listing, your account health will make the determination as to where your item is placed. Now, what's the takeaway from this? Well, of course, treat your buyers as good as you can, be as proactive as you can as a seller, and maybe, we talk about not putting low ASP items in your store, and I've kind of done that a little bit on my main account on stuff that has higher demand, and I have a lot of safe, very safe items that I've been selling, and I've been selling them at a pretty decent clip, and we're talking like $10 transactions, which I don't like, but it adds to the number of transactions that I'm going to be having, and it's going to allow me to not only stay above the 400 item threshold per 90 days, but it will also help lower my percentages, because a lot of those things we talked about were based on a percentage, and the more transactions you have, safe, positive transactions where you have no problems, it will help offset some of the other issues you might have that's out of your control, or we're all human, and sometimes mistakes can happen, and you have to be looking for ways to help keep yourself above the threshold, keep yourself above average as compared to your peers, because you want to maintain your account health, and you need to maintain your account health, I'll say it, at all costs. That's the most important thing, guys. But figuring this all out, finding ways to stay above water, and then adding all this into it is yet another example of how flipping ain't easy. And Google thinks you're going to like one of these videos, so check them out. But in the meantime, have an excellent rest of your day, everyone. Take care.